Pardon, madame.
Merci.
Pardon. 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 Pardon.
Who's it from? The American Embassy.
I bluffed the old man out of the last pot with a pair of deuces.
What's so depressing about that?
Well, I mean, if I can do it, what are the Russians doing to him?
Hello? Hello?
Is there anything wrong, Miss Tompkins?
Miss Tompkins isn't here.
Oh, I'm sorry. My secretary must have gone to lunch. You are,
Mrs. Lambert, Mrs. Charles Lambert.
Oh, yes. Please, come in, Mrs. Lambert. Excuse me for a moment, Mrs. Lambert. It's a stubborn little devil. Dry cleaning-wise, things are all fouled up. I had a good man, a really excellent man on the Rue Pontoux. But HQ asked us to use the plant here in the building to ease the gold outflow.
Mr. Bartholomew, are you quite sure you know who I am?
You're Charles Lambert's widow, yes? I'm very sorry. Last time I sent out a tie, only the spot came back. Voila, as they say. Won't you sit down, Mrs. Lambert? I've got something here. I've got liverwurst, chicken, and liverwurst.
No, thank you.
Mrs. Lambert, do you know what CIA is?
I don't suppose it's an airline, is it?
Central Intelligence Agency, CIA.
You mean spies and all of that?
Only we call them agents.
We? You mean you?
Someone has to do it, Mrs. Lambert.
It's just that I didn't think people like you were supposed to admit.
Oh, I'm not an agent. I'm an administrator, a desk jockey, trying to run a bureau of overworked men with under-allocated funds. Congress seems to think that all a spy needs...
Agent.
Yes. That all he needs is a code book, a cyanide pill, and he's in business.
What's all this got to do with me, Mr. Bartholomew?
Your husband was wanted by the United States government.
May I have a sandwich, please?
Chicken or liverwurst?
Chicken.
To be more specific, Mrs. Lambert, your husband was wanted by this agency.
So that was it.
Yes. We, of course, knew him by his real name. Voss. Charles Voss. All right, Mrs. Voss. Now, I'd like you to look at this photograph here for a moment, please. Tell us if you recognize... Oh. By the way, have you seen this one? Scott, Kathy, and Ham Jr.
Very sweet.
Aren't they? All right, Mrs. Voss.
Please stop calling me that. Lambert's the name on the marriage license.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Mrs. Lambert, would you look at that photograph and tell me if you recognize anyone, please? Now, just a moment. Have a good look.
It's Charles.
Very good.
He looks so young. When was this taken?
1944. Next, please.
The man who was at the funeral yesterday. A tall man in a corduroy suit.
Does the name Tex Penthollow mean anything to you?
No.
You like some wine?
Oh, thank you.
Next, please.
He was there, too. A little less hair, but it's the same one.
Do you know him, Mrs. Lambert? Leopold W. Gideon?
No.
The last one, please.
That's a face you don't forget. He was there, too.
Herman Scobie. You've never seen him before, either?
No, thank heaven.
Mrs. Lambert, I'm very much afraid that you are in a great deal of danger.
Why should I be in any danger?
You're Charles Voss's wife. Now that he's dead, you're their only lead.
Mr. Bartholomew, if you're trying to frighten me, you're doing a first-rate job.
Please do what we ask, Mrs. Lambert. It's your only chance.
Gladly, but I don't know what you want. You haven't told me.
Oh? I haven't? Well, it's the money, Mrs. Lambert. The money. Of $250,000 Charles Voss received from the auction. Those three men wanted too. They want it very badly.
But that's Charles's money, not theirs.
Oh, Mrs. Lambert, I'd love to see you try and convince them of that. Oh, boy.
But then whose is it? His or theirs?
Ours.
Oh.
Charles Voss stole $250,000 from the United States government. I'm afraid we want it back.
But I don't have it.
That's impossible, Mrs. Lambert. You're the only one who could have it.
Mr. Bartholomew, if I had $250,000, believe me, I'd know it.
Nevertheless, Mrs. Lambert, you've got it.
You mean it's just lying around somewhere? All that cash?
Or a certified check, a safe deposit key, baggage claim. You look for it, Mrs. Lambert. I'm quite sure you'll find it. Look for it. Look just as hard and as fast as you can. You may not have a great deal of time. Those three men know you've got the money just as surely as we do. You won't be safe until the money's in our hands. Is that clear? Now, here's where you ought to call me, day or night. It's a direct line to both my office and my apartment. And please don't tell anyone about coming to see us today. It could prove fatal for them as well as yourself. As I said, Mrs. Lambert, I'm afraid you're in a great deal of danger. I regret very much having to say this, but please remember what happened to your husband.
Hello.
Hello, Peter.
Now, didn't you telephone me to meet you on that corner over there?
I'm sorry I heard the children laughing. Do you understand French?
Not a word. I'm still having trouble with English.
The man and the woman are married.
Oh, I can see that. They're batting each other over the head. Who's that with the hat?
That's the policeman. He wants to arrest Judy for killing Punch.
What's she saying now?
That she's innocent. She didn't do it.
Oh, she did it all right.
I believe her.
Well, who was that?
That's Punch, of course.
Punch, of course. I thought he was dead.
He's only pretending to teach her a lesson. Only he is dead, Peter. I saw him. He's not pretending. Somebody threw him off a train. Charles was mixed up in something terrible. What am I going to do?
I wish you'd let me help you. It doesn't sound like the sort of thing a young woman can handle by herself. How about making me vice president in charge of cheering you up?
Starting tonight?
Bonsoir, messieurs, dames. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Buonasera, signori, signori. Ce soir, comme tous les autres soirs d'ailleurs, vous savez très bien qu'ici au Black Sheep Club, l'attraction, c'est vous. Alors, approchez-vous, messieurs, dames. Venez-y. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen.
What's going on?
Fun and games. Evidently, we're the floor show. Come on.
What, you and me?
Everyone.
Avanti, avanti, signori, signori. Écoutez-moi bien, messieurs, dames, les règles du jeu sont très simples. Alors, écoutez-moi. Alors, il y a deux équipes. There are two teams. Et pour chaque équipe, il y a une orange. For every team, there is one orange. Una naranja. Un appelsinet. Vous mettez l'orange sur le moto comme ça. You put the orange on it like so. Vous passez cette orange à la personne derrière vous. You pass the orange to the person behind you. Mais sans vous servir les mains. Without the use of your hands. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Mrs. Lambert.
Who are you?
Didn't Charles tell you, Mrs. Lambert?
Tell me what?
It doesn't belong to you. You do know that, don't you?
I don't know anything.
Mrs. Lambert. Any morning now, you could wake up dead, Mrs. Lambert.
Leave me alone.
Dead, Mrs. Lambert, like last week's news, like Charles, Mrs. Lambert.
Stop it.
What's the trouble?
He stepped on my foot.
Forgive me.
Wait here, I won't be long.
It was quite unintentional, I'm sure.
Mr. Bartholomew, this is Regina Lambert. Mr. Bartholomew, I just saw one of those men. Mr. Bartholomew, can you hear me? Mr. Bartholomew, this is Regina Lambert. I just...
Howdy.
What do you want?
Now, you must be kidding.
No, I'm not.
Now, come on now, Miss Lambert. You know what it is? You're gonna get it for me, too. You know I ain't fooling around here. No, sirree, Bob.
No, that's me.
Now, don't make too much noise, Miss Lambert.
Oh.
It could get a whole lot worse, you know. Now, it belongs to me, Miss Lambert. And you're gonna get it for me. Or your life ain't gonna be worth the paper it's printed on. Do you say what I'm saying to you?
Stop! Stop! Please stop!
Now, you go home and think it over real careful
You're
right now.
insane. You're absolutely insane.
What's the matter? What are you doing in here?
I'm having a nervous breakdown.